The first organelle we are talking about today is referred to as the Golgi apparatus. Sometimes you'll see it as Golgi body instead, but they're the same thing. So the Golgi apparatus is this weird little folded membrane structure, which you can kind of see over here, that I kind of think of it like if we're looking at the edge of a folded blanket or a folded towel, you can see just all of the layers of it, but you can't actually see like the attachment. So you can kind of think of it like a blanket. And its job is that it gets vesicles out of protein from the ER. And a vesicle is like a mini cart. And that mini cart is transporting proteins around the cell. So the vesicle is what is getting transported. The Golgi is processing, sorting, and shipping the proteins where needed. So an analogy that can go along with this example is that our Golgi apparatus would be like the mailman or UPS, and the vesicle would be the package that is getting delivered. Now we are ready for lysosomes, and we can see here that lysosomes are in animal cells only. That's something important to note. And their structure is important because they contain enzymes. And if we recall, enzymes are one of our proteins, and their function is that they speed up chemical reactions. So what that looks like for a lysosome is that they are breaking down dead stuff. So whether that's food, bacteria, old parts of the cell, or whatever else it is, the lysosome is breaking that down through a series of chemical reactions. It also can do what is known as apoptosis, and that is programmed cell death. I love the word apoptosis. It's one of my favorite science words. And what it's doing here in programmed cell death is that maybe it's old and the cell knows that it is wearing out, so it will literally program its own death for the betterment of the cell. And so again, we can see that we have our lysosomes here only in our animal cells. The next organelle is a vacuole, and you can see we have two different ones pictured here. And vacuoles can be small. They can be small and numerous in our animal cells, and then they are large and just one central one in our plant cells. So you can really see the size difference in our animal cell one here versus the really big one that goes in the center of our plants. The function of our vacuoles for both plants and animals is that it is storage, and it is storing mostly water, but a few nutrients and waste as well. Centrioles is our next organelle, and again, this is in animal cells only. The structure of centrioles is that it's made up of microtubules, which is exactly what the name sounds like. Micro means tiny, and tube. So you can see in our little picture over here, we just have a whole bunch of these little tiny tubes all put together. And we can have two of our centrioles together, and we call those a centrosome. And their function is that they appear during cell division. And what they do during cell division is that they're going to help the cell divide by pulling the chromosomes apart from each other. And again, you can see it here in just our animal cell, but not in either of the other two. We are now looking at two different but very similar organelles, and that is cilia and flagella. So let's first look at the structure of cilia. And cilia are shorter, and they are more numerous. So we can think of them as in like tiny oars. So they have similar projections that are short and numerous, but they're not moving, and they are called microvilli. So that's just something that is similar to our regular villi. But if we compare that to our flagella, there are less of them. There are fewer, but they are longer in structure. Let's look at the function of them, their job. So cilia, they're short and numerous, so they are moving fluid across the cell surface, whereas flagella, there's only a couple of them, so they are moving the entire cell through the fluid outside of the cell. So if we look at their pictures, here we can see a great example of flagella in the human body, and that is the tail on our sperm cells. And then over here we can see microvilli, which are these little hair projections coming off of the cells. So flagella are moving the entire cell, cilia are moving fluid around the cell. Our next organelle is the mitochondria. And the mitochondria structure is a little more difficult in that it has two parts. It has an inner membrane structure and the matrix, which is the fluid portion. So you can see that in our picture here. This little squiggly line of purple on the inside would be our inner membrane, and then the green around is the matrix. So we could say the matrix would be similar to our cytoplasm. And so the function of our mitochondria is that this is where cellular respiration happens, and we will have a whole unit talking about cellular respiration later on, but essentially it is the breakdown of food to release as energy, which we get our energy in the form of ATP. So because it is our actual source of energy, it's making the energy for our body, it often gets referred to as this term, the powerhouse of the cell. So we could think of this kind of like a power plant where all of your energy or electricity is being made, and that is the mitochondria. Next, we have the chloroplast, and we can see here that this is in plant cells only, and that is this green structure over here. And like the mitochondria, it also has this two-part structure where it is made of the grana, which are the little stacks that you see over here. I like to think of them as pancakes, and so they look like your stack of pancakes is the grana. Then the other portion, the fluid portion, we call the stroma. And again, if we think of this in terms of pancakes, stroma can be the outside fluid, which is the syrup. The function of the chloroplast is that it is the structure where photosynthesis happens. And we know that photosynthesis happens in plants, and that's why you see this as a green color. And what it's doing in photosynthesis is converting energy from the sun into chemical energy in sugar. Our next structure is the cell wall. And again, this is something that is found in plants, but it is also found in our bacteria, but notice that it is not found in our animal cells. So if we look at the structure, we have different kinds of structure depending on where it's found. And we see that it is made of cellulose when it's in plants. And it is called chitin when it's found in fungi. And if we don't know, fungi is things like mushrooms and mold. And then we see it in the form of peptidoglycan in our bacteria. The function, though, is the same for all of them, and that is to protect and maintain the shape of the cell. The last organelle we have to cover is called the central vacuole. And we have kind of touched on this already. I just want to talk about it again so we understand its difference from our regular vacuoles. And you can see it's in plant cells only, and it is the really large one that is in the center. So it is one massive. It is our central storage structure, and that is its function, is storage. So same as our regular vacuoles, it is storing water, and just we need to differentiate that the central vacuole is in plant only, and it really is in the center, and it is massive, taking up a large portion of the cell.